La gala benéfica estaba llena de luces, cámaras y risas artificiales. Ella, 30 años, piel clara, cabello castaño oscuro recogido en un elegante moño, vestido rojo largo con detalles dorados, caminaba entre la multitud con una sonrisa nerviosa, consciente de cada mirada. De repente, un niño pequeño de 6 años, piel clara, cabello castaño claro con un pequeño traje formal azul, se acercó a ella y señalándola con emoción, gritó «¡Mamá!». Todos en la gala se congelaron, entre ellos un hombre de 35 años, piel ligeramente bronceada, cabello negro corto, traje negro impecable con corbata plateada, multimillonario y con expresión de incredulidad, quedó paralizado al escuchar aquella palabra que rompía años de secretos y silencios. La tensión era palpable. La gala, hasta entonces elegante y controlada, se transformó en un instante de pura sorpresa y emoción. Ella respiró hondo, mientras el pequeño corría hacia ella con los brazos extendidos. Su vestido rojo brillaba bajo las luces de la gala, y el suave aroma a perfume llenaba el aire. Sus tacones negros resonaban con cada paso, y su corazón latía con fuerza. Nunca había esperado que la noche diera un giro tan inesperado.
Something strange is happening in Cleveland. The Browns, a team that once looked like it finally had a plan, are now sinking fast. And right in the middle of the storm is head coach Kevin Stefanski, a man once praised for rebuilding the franchise, now facing what might be the most dangerous moment of his career. Because according to multiple sources, a major shakeup is coming, and it might happen sooner than anyone expects. But this isn't just about losing games. It's about locker room tension, power struggles, and one name that's dividing the entire organization, Shedeur Sanders. So how did a promising season collapse into chaos? And is Stefanski about to pay the ultimate price? It started quietly. Week after week, the Browns stumbled, missed tackles, sloppy play calling, an offense that looked completely lost. Fans kept waiting for a spark, but it never came. Instead, whispers began to spread inside the organization. Whispers that something deeper was wrong. Kevin Stefanski, once seen as a steady, composed leader, suddenly looked uncertain. His team couldn't find rhythm. His quarterback couldn't find confidence. And his decisions were starting to raise eyebrows. Behind the scenes, owner Jimmy Haslam was watching closely. Sources say his patience was running thin, and that business as usual wasn't going to cut it anymore. By the time the losses started stacking up, frustration wasn't just coming from the fans. Analysts on local shows began hinting that a total house cleaning might be coming. And not at the end of the year, but possibly before it. Week after week, Gabriel threw short, hesitant passes while defenses picked him apart. Fans could feel the frustration boiling, not just at the results, but at the coach's refusal to change anything. Every post-game interview felt like deja vu. Stefanski defending his system, defending his quarterback, and defending decisions that no one understood anymore. That's when the name Shedeur Sanders started echoing through the city. A young, electrifying talent with confidence, star power, and the kind of fan base that could reignite the Browns' future. The moment Sanders' name entered the conversation, everything shifted. Reports surfaced that Jimmy Haslam, the team's owner, had personally pushed for Sanders to get a real shot, but Stefanski wouldn't even mention his name in press conferences. To some, it looked like stubbornness. To others, ego. And in Cleveland, where fans have endured decades of heartbreak, that silence spoke louder than any loss on the field. Then came the breaking point. Myles Garrett, the team's defensive leader, finally said what everyone else was thinking. He voiced his frustration publicly, questioning the play calling, the direction of the team, and even hinting that the Browns were wasting talent by refusing to experiment. When Garrett speaks, people listen. And suddenly what used to be quiet frustration became a full-blown locker room divide. Was Stefanski protecting his young quarterback? Or was he protecting his pride? The more he doubled down on Dillon Gabriel, the more isolated he became. Inside sources began to whisper that Haslam's patience had officially run out. But that was just the beginning, because the controversy around Shedeur Sanders was about to explode far beyond football. Behind closed doors, the tension inside the Browns headquarters was reaching a breaking point. Owner Jimmy Haslam isn't the type to sit quietly and watch his franchise unravel. Known for his fiery personality and quick decisions, Haslam has never hesitated to make sweeping changes when he feels control slipping away. And lately, control was exactly what he was losing. Insiders say Haslam was furious, not just about the losses, but about Kevin Stefanski's complete refusal to adapt. To Haslam, it wasn't only about football, it was about accountability. He had invested millions, reshaped the roster, and even pushed for bold moves, including the controversial signing of Shedeur Sanders. But when the cameras rolled, Stefanski wouldn't even acknowledge Sanders. That moment told Haslam everything he needed to know. Reports claim that during one private meeting, Haslam questioned whether Stefanski truly understood the modern game, the kind of game where charisma, media presence, and fan energy matter just as much as X's and O's. Sanders wasn't just a quarterback, he was a brand. And ignoring him wasn't just a coaching decision, it was a marketing disaster. Meanwhile, the fan base was turning volatile. Social media lit up with posts demanding change. Local radio hosts mocked the stubborn coach who refuses to evolve. And the more the noise grew, the more pressure landed directly on Haslam. To fans, he was the one responsible for fixing it. Whispers started leaking that the Browns owner was strongly considering a mid-season change. Analysts debated whether he'd actually pull the trigger. But those close to Haslam said this time it felt different. This wasn't frustration. It was embarrassment. As one insider put it, when the owner starts worrying about headlines more than the scoreboard, somebody's job is already gone. The mood in Cleveland was shifting fast, from disappointment to open rebellion. But as Haslam's anger boiled over, Stefanski's next move would determine everything. Once the story hit the media, there was no turning back. What started as quiet whispers inside the Browns facility exploded into national headlines. Sports networks couldn't get enough of it. Is Stefanski losing the locker room? Why won't the Browns play Shedeur Sanders? Every talk show had an opinion, and every segment seemed to push the same message. Kevin Stefanski was out of touch. The headlines spread faster than the team could respond. Analysts like Skip Bayless went on air and accused Stefanski of trying to paint Shedeur Sanders as entitled, a rich kid who didn't earn his shot. But Bayless wasn't buying it. He reminded everyone that Sanders had earned everything with his performance and work ethic. He plays like a kid from the toughest neighborhood you could imagine, Bayless said. He just happens to have fame in his blood. Those words struck a chord with fans. They flipped the narrative instantly. Suddenly, Shedeur wasn't the villain in this story. He was the underdog, the talented young player being held back by a stubborn coach. And that storyline spread like wildfire. The Browns' PR team scrambled to contain the damage, but it was too late. Every day brought new segments, new debates, new tension. Local reporters started digging deeper, publishing insider claims that Myles Garrett and other players had grown frustrated with the coaching staff's tone-deaf approach. The locker room, once united, was now clearly divided. Stefanski tried to stay calm in interviews, repeating that his focus was on football, not outside noise. But the more he downplayed the crisis, the more disconnected he seemed. The fans could feel it, that emotional gap between coach and city. And when Mary Kay Cabot, a respected Browns insider, released her report calling Stefanski's handling of Shedeur Sanders a major misstep, it felt like the final blow. The narrative was no longer about football decisions. It was about leadership. The pressure was unbearable, the headlines unrelenting. And deep inside Berea, even the players knew something was about to break. Inside the Browns locker room, the tension was no longer hidden. You could feel it in the air. The quiet conversations, the sharp looks, the uneasy silence after another loss. Players were frustrated, not just by the results, but by the feeling that no one was being heard. Defensive star Myles Garrett became the voice of that frustration. After weeks of watching the same mistakes play out, he finally broke his silence. "It's frustrating to lose the same way every time," he told reporters. "It's frustrating as hell." Those words hit hard. They weren't just about the defense. They were about everything. The game plan, the play calling, the leadership. Behind the scenes, sources say several veteran players began to question whether Stefanski still had control of the team. Some described the atmosphere as emotionally drained. Others said the coach's calm, quiet demeanor, once seen as a strength, now felt like indifference. And then came the breaking point. During a closed-door team meeting, Garrett reportedly challenged the staff about the offense's direction, specifically asking why Shedeur Sanders hadn't been given a chance. The room went silent. Coaches tried to steer the conversation elsewhere, but the damage was done. The divide was real, and everyone knew it. Word of that confrontation leaked almost immediately. Local insiders described it as the moment the locker room split in two. Some players still backed Stefanski, believing in his process. Others wanted change, any change, before the season completely collapsed. For the front office, the situation became impossible to ignore. Every headline, every soundbite, every rumor was now a reflection of a team unraveling. And Jimmy Haslam, watching from above, saw the chaos he'd been warned about unfolding in real time. The Browns were no longer fighting opponents on the field. They were fighting each other. And as the walls of the organization started to crack, one question echoed through the building. How much longer could Stefanski survive this storm? The week before the Dolphins game felt different. Reporters could sense it. Players could feel it. Even the usually calm Kevin Stefanski looked uneasy during his press conferences. When asked about the team's struggles, he gave short answers. When pressed about Shedeur Sanders, he smiled faintly and said, "We're focused on the guys who are here to play." But everyone knew what that meant. Nothing was changing. Behind closed doors, things were far less calm. According to multiple sources, Jimmy Haslam called a private meeting with Stefanski and general manager Andrew Berry. What started as a routine discussion turned tense almost immediately. Haslam reportedly questioned why the team wasn't evaluating Sanders, the player he personally advocated to bring in. Stefanski, staying composed, repeated that he believed in Dillon Gabriel's long-term development. That answer didn't sit well. One insider said Haslam's tone shifted from frustration to outright disbelief. "You keep talking about the long term," he said, "but we're losing right now." For Haslam, it wasn't just about the quarterback anymore. It was about control. He felt the team was slipping away from his vision, that Stefanski's calm resistance was bordering on defiance. The meeting ended abruptly with no resolution. But afterward, word began to spread that the owner was seriously considering making a change before the end of the season. Meanwhile, the media pressure only intensified. Every headline, every debate show segment, every rumor seemed to push the same narrative. Stefanski's time was running out. Even national outlets began listing possible replacements, treating his firing as inevitable rather than hypothetical. Inside the locker room, the energy was fractured. Some players avoided interviews altogether, while others quietly admitted They didn't know what was going to happen next. And as the Browns prepared for their next game, one truth hung in the air, like fog over Lake Erie. This wasn't just another loss waiting to happen. It was the beginning of the end. The morning after another crushing loss, the city of Cleveland woke up buzzing with rumors. Local radio stations were on fire. Twitter threads exploded with speculation. And reporters outside the Browns facility were waiting for a single headline: Kevin Stefanski fired. But no announcement came. Not yet. Instead, silence. The kind of silence that usually means decisions are being made behind closed doors. Sources close to the organization claimed that Jimmy Haslam had called an emergency meeting with top executives immediately after the game. The discussion, they said, wasn't about strategy or player performance. It was about the future of leadership. By now, everyone inside the organization knew that Stefanski's job was hanging by a thread. Some staffers began quietly packing up personal items, expecting the inevitable shakeup. Others tried to keep morale up, insisting that nothing's been decided yet. But deep down, the atmosphere was thick with finality. Meanwhile, reports started surfacing about possible replacements. Names like Eric Bieniemy, Brian Flores, and Jim Harbaugh floated through talk shows and insider reports. Analysts debated not if Stefanski would be replaced, but when. The most telling moment came when Haslam was asked by a reporter if Stefanski still had his full confidence. His answer was short, sharp, and revealing. "We'll evaluate everything after this week." That single sentence told the city everything it needed to know. Fans, already restless, began flooding social media with mixed reactions. Some thanked Stefanski for what he built. Others demanded a clean slate. The locker room felt the weight, too. Veterans avoided eye contact. Rookies looked uncertain. And even assistants whispered about what would happen if the firing went public mid-season. The Browns were no longer fighting for a playoff spot. They were fighting for identity, stability, and respect. And as Haslam weighed his options, the truth became unavoidable. Someone was going to fall. The only question left was when. As the days ticked by, the tension in Cleveland reached a fever pitch. Every practice, every press conference, every sideline interaction was analyzed, dissected, and debated. Kevin Stefanski, once seen as the steady hand capable of turning the Browns into contenders, now appeared increasingly isolated. Inside the front office, Jimmy Haslam faced a decision that could define the franchise for years. Stick with Stefanski and hope Dylan Gabriel develops as planned, or pivot to Shedeur Sanders, embracing the potential star whose popularity and performance could reshape the team instantly. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Meanwhile, the city, the fans, and the media weren't just watching games anymore. They were watching a drama unfold in real time. One that went far beyond touchdowns and turnovers. Every headline about Stefanski's stubbornness or Sanders' rising influence added pressure. Every social media post, every insider leak, fueled speculation that a mid-season shakeup was inevitable. For Stefanski, the choice was simple in theory. Remain true to his plan and risk losing his job, or adapt and risk looking like he had been wrong all along. For Haslam, it was about accountability, control, and ultimately, legacy. Could he risk the backlash of firing a coach mid-season? Could he ignore the growing unrest in the locker room and the fan base? Sources suggest that inside meetings became intense, with heated discussions about leadership, player development, and the direction of the franchise. It wasn't just football anymore. It was about trust, credibility, and the message the organization wanted to send to the world. And then there was the quarterback question. Sanders, vibrant and confident, was ready if called upon. Gabriel, loyal and determined, was still learning. choosing between them wasn't just tactical, it was symbolic of the team's identity. As the Browns prepared for the next game, one reality loomed over every decision. The next few weeks could decide the fate of a coach, a team, and a city desperate for stability. Stefanski's tenure, Gabriel's future, and Sanders' opportunity were all intertwined. A high-stakes drama that could end in redemption or collapse. In Cleveland, nothing about this saga will be forgotten soon. And for Stefanski, the question remains, will steadfast loyalty to a young quarterback cost him everything, or could it be the risk that defines his legacy? This completes the 8-part high-retention YouTube script. The story flows naturally, builds suspense, highlights controversy, and leaves the viewer thinking. Exactly what drives clicks and engagement.